Right, so this presentation is about coping after a loss. My name is Jen. I am the bereavement coordinator for Ministry Hospice. I have been working for hospice since March, so it's been a very short period of time. Like I said, I started hospice in March of this year. I have a master's degree in thalattology, which is the study of grief, bereavement, death, dying. And I have like a really different medical background. I've come from, I was a CNA, I'm still an x-ray tech. I've worked several different jobs throughout, so I've experienced loss on several different levels, so it's been pretty good there. So today we're going to be doing these objectives here, defining grief and loss and types of losses, so this isn't going to just be focused on loss because of a death. We're going to talk about how we cope and how we understand grief, what we can do that might be helpful to help cope with losses and deal with that. And then we're going to also talk about different services that are offered by hospice. All right. So first, I'm just going to go through a few definitions so everybody has an understanding of what different things mean. With coping, coping is the ability to face or deal with a situation or a problem. Loss being the state of being deprived from something or someone. So like I said before, it doesn't mean a loss of a person necessarily. It could be a loss from something else. All right, and then grief is our natural response to a loss, the emotional part you feel. The grief is what you actually feel inside. And then the last is mourning, the outward expression of grief, crying, that sort of thing like people do at funerals and such. So when we talk about grief and talk about loss, we all want grief to be real easy and simple so that we can get through it. But grief really looks like the picture on the right. It's very complicated and it's lots of things because as we all know, we all don't experience the same type of grief. We don't all deal with grief the same way as someone else. So there's different types of losses that we can deal with. Divorce, relationship breakup, as we see the list here, several different losses, like I said, other than death. Has anybody experienced any of these things in the last year? Okay. And as we accumulate these losses, they pile on to us and they keep accumulating. If you have one thing go on, then something else happens. And if you're not able to cope with those things, it makes it more complicated to cope with later on. All right, and like I said, how many people have had more than one thing of those happen in the last year? Okay. So like I said, it just keeps piling. So there are a lot of important things to remember when we cope with a loss. How do you cope with the things? What are things that help you cope, get through the hard times? And what are some things that you guys do? Would anyone like to share things that help them through a loss?
Just sharing with the people that are going through it with you.
Yep, that's good.
To family and friends.
Right. That is a good, very good way. And, as hard as it can be sometimes to be able to do that actually helps you because the more you talk about it, it almost feels like the easier it gets for you. So, that's a big thing, and everyone that thinks that, okay, well, that happened to you a month ago, you should be over that now, but that's really not always the case, as you all know. There is no normal way for anyone to deal with grief at all, or any sort of a loss. It's totally dependent on you and what you have going on and how you cope with it. It all kind of goes back to you. And there is no timetable to grief or loss. You're going to be the one who determines based on how you handle the grief or the loss to how long it's going to take you to be able to get over that. Not get over that, but be able to work through those things. So there are stages of grief that everybody goes through, and this is called the modified Keebler-Ross model. It's just basically different steps of things that people go through as they experience loss. Most of the time, people first initially see the shock. It's very shocking when you first find something out. Even talking about a divorce or something, if you're either the one initiating or receiving, it's a shock to one or both. Then you're trying to avoid the inevitable. You're denying that it's happening. Is it really happening? Am I really going through this? Then a lot of times people get angry. Angry because the other person didn't do what they were supposed to do, and that's why that's happening. Or with a loss, you're thinking, why me? Why is this happening to me? Why am I the one that's having to deal with this? And all these don't all have to go in order, and some people might not go through every one of these steps, but it's a good idea of, how that happens. The other thing, bargaining, what is a way to think about it? Why is this happening? Like we talked, it kind of goes hand in hand with the anger. And then some people find themselves depressed that it's happening to them. And again, why me? Why is this doing to me? And then, trying to realizing that it's really happening to you. Kind of getting the realizing into you and realizing that. And then testing, seeking solutions. You're trying to figure out how you're going to deal with this, how you're going to cope with this, how you're going to be able to manage through this. And then finally being able to accept and to move forward, which is often obviously the toughest part, because you have to be able to get through all of your different emotions before you're able to do that. All right. Does anybody have any questions about anything so far? And I forgot to mention, if you have any questions about anything, just feel free to ask in that. So, okay. So we already kind of talked about it, but with these physical emotions here, what are things that have happened with you? What do you feel has happened to you when you're going through grief? What are the type of things that you're experiencing within you? Pain. It's a very good one. The emotions are such a difficult thing for us to work through. The pain of it is really tough because no one can take away that pain completely. So that makes it really hard. Anything else?
Pretty much whatever's up there,
Right.
Go through the shock of it, and then
Right.
you shut down so that you're sad and you're fatigued and
Yep.
appetite changes.
True.
I didn't have the poor appetite. I just devoured everything in sight.
Yep. And depending on how people deal with it, often people use food as a comfort item. Well, that makes me feel good. It'll help me feel better right now. But being able to realize that you have those things going on is a big, big thing. And being able to kind of change that around. I mean, a lot of people can't change it right away, but eventually being able to work through those issues to help you not have all these feelings and emotions, and some of these are physical signs of grief. You're having trouble sleeping because of your grief, can affect things during your day, your daily routine, where you start to feel the physical, and you start having headaches or backaches or different things like that. And those things, when they start going on and getting that deep, is important to make sure you see your doctor and talk over those things, because sometimes, by letting them know, it can not necessarily they can refer for counseling, or, if anyone gets too deep in grief, can help with like medications or that sort of thing.
Or even distancing yourself from everybody else.
That's a very good point. Yep.
I've never done this before, broken into a meeting like this. I lost a beloved older cousin last year, and the feeling that I had was guilt.
Yeah.
We lived apart from one another, but we talked on a regular basis. But
Yeah.
even that, I was thinking, what else could I have done?
Right.
Especially as during the last 6 months of her life, when she really was in need of support, and what more could I have done under
Right.
the circumstances?
A lot of people feel that way. When you lose someone, you feel like, what could I have done differently? How could I have impacted or spent more time with them, and that sort of thing. That's an entirely normal, and it is part of the whole process of dealing with the grief. I mean, no one can take those feelings you have away, of those things. It's just a matter of, like we do in our support groups, of thinking of positive times, that you've spent together, and, the time you did have. I mean, you can't change anything, but, being able to work through it that way is a good way to think about it, I guess. So, yeah. All right. So we're going to go on to the next one. So we just talked about that. Other things, helpful ways to cope with a loss. Feel your feelings, notice that your feelings are your feelings and they're your own, and that you yourself need to be able to work through those. Cry when you need to cry. Everyone thinks crying is a sense of weakness, but it's really not. It's, being able to show your emotions is a good thing, because a lot of people try to hold back, and you're holding back, you're suppressing your grief, you're suppressing your coping, your ability to cope. Like you brought up, being able to talk with supportive people about what's going on with you is a very positive way to deal with it. And then again, giving yourself time. There's no timetable to dealing with grief. And so true, the deeper we love, the deeper we grieve. So we talk about I do a loss of spouse support group. And oftentimes, people say, I can't get over this. I can't deal with this. How? But it's so true that the relationship you have is not a relationship it's not going to just go away, even though in the case of a death, it's not going to go away. I mean, you still were with that individual, you still were related to that person, friends with that person, whatever the case may be. And depending on the relationship, it's very likely that it might take you a significant amount of time but as you go through your grief, it's hoped that your grief will lighten a little bit to the point where you're able to start dealing with some of it, and it won't be as strong. What we describe as when someone feels like, when you first get some bad news or grief, it feels almost like someone is sitting on you, and you have so much, I don't want to say anxiousness, but you're so upset about what has happened that you almost feel like someone's sitting on you and you can't breathe. But the hope is after time, little by little, it'll kind of lighten a little bit and you won't feel so much like that. So, all right. So this slide here, instead of ignoring loss and trauma or moving quickly past them, we can choose to slow down, sit with each loss, examine it, and grieve it. It's better to sink in and experience it now than to find yourself drowning years later in losses that had no voice. Which is so true. A lot of people just kind of, like I said, don't express themselves, don't show emotion, and then they're stuck with this, and then something else happens and it's even more, and it's just constant piling effect. All right, so we're gonna just watch this short. I was looking for a video that kind of helped reinforce what I was talking about. It's just a short 5-minute video on coping with loss. So I'm gonna just click on it here.
Grieving can be exhausting, surreal, confusing, leaving us feeling completely lost. We thought we understood grief, but soon realized we didn't. We did not know it can be so physical and even feel like it will kill us. We did not realize that fear can be more overwhelming than sadness. We did not anticipate that a major loss can make us feel like a stranger in a strange land, cut off from everything that gave us comfort in the past. We simply did not know grief. Grievers of a major loss often need guidance in finding their way out of the darkness. Here are 12 suggestions to help facilitate your grieving after experiencing a major loss. 1. Be patient with yourself. Grief is disorienting and exhausting, so keep your expectations of yourself realistic. 2. Be gentle with yourself. You have been deeply wounded and will need a compassionate inner voice to help you work through the trauma of major loss. 3. Keep your life as simple as possible. You will be exhausted and in no frame of mind to make decisions, so don't if you don't have to. Give yourself time to find your equilibrium and rebuild your strength. 4. Allow yourself time and space to grieve. In other words, don't pretend you haven't been wounded. Instead, find ways to work through the feelings and thoughts triggered by the loss. 5. Develop rituals to facilitate the grieving process. Read about grief. Attend a grief support group. Journal about grief. Talk with others who have experienced similar losses, or see a grief counselor. 6. fix, but also give yourself permission to set grieving aside for a while. In other words, don't obsess on the loss for any longer than necessary. It's okay to work, laugh, relax, and have fun when you can. You'll definitely need breaks from grieving to recharge your batteries for the difficult work ahead. 7. Seek support from safe people who do not judge you or tell you how to grieve. In fact, you might find support from unexpected acquaintances who quietly emerge from the shadows and know how to listen, most likely because they've suffered a similar loss. 8. Most importantly, accept that your life is going to feel crazy or unreal for a while. You can't wish the pain away or just snap out of it. There are no shortcuts to grieving. You must gradually work through the pain. 9. Have faith that grieving leads to healing. Faith matters because major loss can leave you feeling hopeless. Speaking with a grief counselor or others who have experienced a similar loss can offer hope. Educating yourself about grief can help you trust the process of grieving when hope seems difficult to find. 10. Have faith that grieving leads to personal growth. The bittersweet truth is that achieving acceptance will make you a wiser person. 11. Try to find meaning in your suffering. As your grieving progresses, try to invest your pain in some meaningful activities, big or small, that honor your loved one, which can transform your suffering into sacred love. 12. Self-care is never more important than when grieving a major loss. Thus, when you feel lost and don't know what to do, ask yourself this question. What do I need to do to take care of myself right now? Do I need to eat something or get some rest, talk to someone, or take a shower? Whatever you decide you need, do it. Self-care must be your default focus when grieving a major loss. People-pleasing will not work. If you found this video helpful, please click the thumbs up button. If you want to hear more from me, then subscribe to my channel, Counselor Carl. I will be publishing a new video every other weekend. You can also visit my website, serenitynonviolentTherapy.com, to learn more about me, other mental health topics, and the services I provide.
All right. Was there anything in that video that really hit for you guys? Of a good points that he brought up? He did a really good job of, that's why I put it in here, of describing, different things that occur and how to help yourself cope. So, and like this is the next one here. So being able to join a support group, everyone thinks, and he was mainly referring to a death from a loss, but there are so many different support groups out there for people, living or, for the deceased families, that you can go online and pretty much find any resources to support that way. And counseling, we talked about, getting adequate sleep, seeing your doctor. You don't have to handle the grief alone. So like I said, the support group and counseling, for anybody who has died under hospice or that we follow up with from a death, in most cases, we don't refer anyone on to counseling. I mean, everyone's gonna feel really sad after they lose someone, and that's normal. We find a lot of times people jump to, I need to see a counselor. But really, most of the time, it's being able to talk about things and being able to kind of recap what happened that helps people the most. So, which is what you do with a counselor, but doing it with people that are more, your personal support is probably the best. So, and another thing, exercising and eating right. So, it goes back with the eating thing of being able to eat right and exercise so you feel a little bit better. So. And just a little bit of a thing here. My grief is like a river. I have to let it flow, but I myself determine just where the banks will go. Some days the current takes me in waves of guilt and pain, but there are always quiet pools where I can rest again. I crash my rocks of anger. My faith seems faint indeed, but there are other swimmers who know that what I need are loving hands to hold me when the waters are too swift, and someone kind to listen when I just seem to drift. Grief's river is a process of relinquishing the past. By swimming in hope's channels, I'll reach the shore at last. That was by Cynthia Kelly. And I thought that's really fitting for, any type of grief. You feel like you're in this big whirlwind of, you don't know what's going to happen. So it's always good to kind of come back to that. Just a little thing. Our hospice services are for anybody in the community too. Everyone thinks that just in order to be under our bereavement program that you have to be on hospice. It's not true. We offer bereavement support to anybody who has lost anyone in the community. So, if someone loses a cousin or a brother or sister, aunt, uncle, any of that to a car accident or a traumatic, like something just happens, we offer support. We, for our hospice patients, offer support in terms of pre and post bereavement visits, if necessary, phone calls. We follow our hospice patients or anybody in the community that calls and wants support for 13 months. During that time, we send out periodic mailings, which includes invitations to our support groups, our loss of spouse support group, and then we have a monthly drop-in group here in Wisconsin Rapids at our office. And then, like I said, the pre and post death visits, we will see people in the office, in their home, wherever it's comfortable for them. So, okay. And does anybody have any questions about that at all? No. Okay. All right. I guess that's about what I have. So, if anybody has anything, and then of course that's our phone number. If anybody ever needs any bereavement support. The other thing is that people don't always understand is that, someone could have lost someone 5 years ago and have never really dealt with it. They're more than welcome to come to our group as well. Our recent support group, we had people in there for loss of spouse that lost a spouse 4 years ago, but they're still struggling. So we are available to anybody at any point of time. So, all right, that's the end there. So. If anyone has anything, questions, anything about what I covered that? No? Okay.
Good job. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.